Earlier example, the principal or the face value is just 300 million US dollar. Okay, some instruments may repay the principal gradually over time, either in equal or variable increment. A typical example is a mortgage loan. What's the difference between a bond and, say, a mortgage loan? You know, a mortgage loan, you don't have to pay the principal at the end of the day, right? Unlike a bond, you have to pay a principal at the end of the day. The reason is because a mortgage loan is an amortizing loan. So it means that in each payment of your loan, it includes both principal repayment and interest as well. So the way they work out the mortgage schedule is at the beginning, you're paying mostly interest. So for example, if your mortgage is like $5,000 a month, right? So maybe at the very beginning, the first few months, almost all of this $5,000 it goes to the interest. Only a very small amount goes to the principal. But as your mortgage progresses, say it's like a 30-year mortgage loan, at the end of 30 year, right, the 5,000, most of it will be paying off the principal, and you're paying less of the interest because you're already paying part of the principal back already. So the interest on the remaining principal will become lower and lower. So they make it in such a way that at the end of the 30 year, you pay off everything, including the interest and the principal. And the reason why they want to do it in such a way is because they know that for most people, you're not able to just pay back a lump sum at the end, right? You want to make sure that you pay back, gradually over time. Now we move to the coupon rate and the frequency. Bonds interest can be structured in different ways. So fixed coupons are paid as specified intervals. So in the earlier examples, 3.2% semi-annually, so every 6 months, right? So and it's fixed. So 3.2 divided by 2 is 1.6. You pay 1.6% every 6 months. But there are cases where the coupons might be variable, and they are paid as also specified interval. So an example of a variable bond will be a floating rate notes, FRN. There are different types of FRN, but for the easiest example, understand is at the onset of the bond, you know how much interest you're going to pay in the 6 months after that. But in the subsequent a year later, you don't know the interest. You only know it 6 months later based on the interest 6 months later in the future. You'll be able to, they will have a fixing of your interest at that time. So you might think that interest rate might fall in the future, right? So a 3.2% interest, is what is the rate right now, but in the future, you might think that the interest might fall, right? So in that case, you might be worried that if interest, so for a person that issue a fixed interest bond, so they want to lock in the interest, right? But if you issue a variable interest, that means you don't want to lock in the interest. You are hoping that the interest might drop in the future, so you can pay a lower coupon rate, right? Interest may be combined with the principal and paid as a single lump sum at maturity. Yeah, I'm not exactly sure what this is actually saying, but interest is always paid with the principal at maturity.
Maybe why is it called a coupon rate? Isn't it just money? Why is it called a coupon?
Okay, so in the past, I think they issue you like a physical paper, right? And you literally have to click off one coupon and go and get the money.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's like, like those coupon that you go to supermarket and you can have a discount. Yeah, it's something like that, right, in the past. So that's why this FRN is what I was saying just now. So this is a bonds with variable interest. It's known as floating rate notes. And the floating rate coupon comprises a market reference rate and an issuer a specific spread called the credit spread. The credit spread is the counterparty risk, right? The risk that you might default on the loan. For a variable coupon, how do you actually specify the coupon? It's okay, 6 months, because your bond is 6 months, right? Maybe say a 6-month LIBOR rate plus like 20 basis points. So your reference rate could be, you need to reference a base rate. The base rate could be, for example, a treasury, a LIBOR, but LIBOR, they already phased it out. Base rate will be like a government issued bond rate, and you add the credit risk spread to it, right? And the credit risk spread, it depends on your company. If your company is like a big blue chip company like Apple, then your credit spread will be a lot smaller than say a company that, like just a new startup. It's, highly likely that you will default. The spread is a lot wider. Or it could be like a LIBOR rate or SOFR rate, and that would be like big banks, like interbank borrowing and lending between major banks, right? So that would be like the base rate. It's based on that. This will cover more in the future.
I think the CO coupon bond is a bit like my GIC. At maturity, it will pay me back my principal plus the interest. But then if I'm having a 2-year GIC, for example, right, they don't pay out the interest. They will just put it, they will just tell me in a document, I earned this amount of interest, and I am not allowed to cancel it. If I cancel it, that's a penalty, right? If I take out the principal. So at the end of the 2 year, then I will just get everything together. I think that may be the Canadian way of having a zero coupon bond.
No, actually, zero coupon bond is a different thing, because it is still a bond, which means that you can still trade it. There's a price to it, right? There's a price to the bond.
Okay, that's a price book. Okay.
And the bond price would change depending on the interest. Zero coupon bond, this just means that you will buy the bond at a discount to the par value. So bonds are usually issued at par, right? Means that the interest rate that they issue will be the current interest rate in the market. So the price of your bond will be like $100. So we think of it as $100 it's usually the way to think of it. So the price that you pay will always be less than $100, right? It'll be like, say, for example, $98. So you pay $98 and you get back $100. You always get back par at the end of a zero coupon bond. And they pay no coupon. There is no coupon for a zero coupon bond. You only get the amount at the end of the bond. You just get it, and you don't even, you get the interest. The interest will be just the difference between the price that you pay and the final amount, which is the par value.
This is interesting. What if I have a perpetual zero coupon bond?
No, there's no perpetual. But zero coupon bond is always a short-term bond.
Okay, got it.
It's like a 1-year bond kind of thing. Because anything more than a year, you will need to pay coupon. Because but you can manufacture zero coupon bonds. Actually, you can strip out coupons for a coupon paying bond. You can actually strip it out to make it a zero coupon bond. Eventually, down the course, you will learn about the yield curve, like zero coupon yield curve. Because the zero coupon is because you take away any intermediate coupon paying, so that any interest, it will be just based on the maturity interest. For example, a 2-year bond, right? If I give you the interest for a 2-year bond, you would think that, so what does that interest actually means? Because every time, say it's a semi-annual bond, you still pay coupon every 6 months, right? But for a zero coupon bond, it means that you only pay at the end of the 2 years. So any interest that you pay would be representative of the 2-year interest rate. Because if you have in the middle, if you have to pay coupon, then the interest rate will no longer be the interest that you are that is at the end of the 2 year.
Now, let's say you have a 2-year zero coupon bond, and then let's say it's like 5% or something, right? That 5% at the end of 1 year, does it go back to my principal? Like, does that get compound for the year 2?
No, everything will be just
Calculate from the beginning, right? Okay.
Yeah, but it will be an annual rate. So any interest rate that we talk about is always an annualized rate.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
But then,
So for example, if it's a 2-year bond, a simple way will be to multiply it by 2.
yeah, okay.
But
Okay.
if it's compound interest, you will need to exponentiate the thing, you know. You have to square it.
I'm just wondering what's the use case of this? So it seems like it's so much a advantage for the borrower, right? Like the borrower has so much advantage. I don't have to pay you interest until it mature, right? So in order for me as a lender, the interest need to be very high for me to take this, right?
Yeah, because there is actually a higher chance of default. Like your duration will be longer. But the problem with all coupon paying bonds is that you would have to worry about reinvesting the bond coupon, right? Because it's a periodically payment.
Yeah,
Unless you are guaranteed, I mean, there is no guarantee, right? You don't know what is the interest going to be in the future. So if you want to lock in a rate, like if it's a zero coupon bond, you know that you're going to lock in a rate for sure. Because you only get back the money at the end, including the interest. But if it's a coupon paying every 6 months period interval, you will have a reinvestment risk. So there are pros and cons. Like pros is I know you don't have to worry. You're less worried in terms of a credit risk, but you will have a reinvestment risk. In the financial market, there's always a risk. The whole financial market is being run because contingency provision. For normal plain vanilla bonds, you don't have any contingency provision. Basically, it's just a simple bond, right? I pay you interest, coupon interest. At the end, I pay you the maturity. You can pay your maturity, and that's it. But for a contingency provision, it means that it's contingent on certain events that happen. So you can think of it in terms of having an options with the bond. Okay, I'll just read out just in case I missed out anything. A contingency provision found in legal agreements permits a certain action upon the occurrence of an event or a circumstance. Right? So based contingent on a certain event happening, you might be able to there's certain things that you can act upon, right? A certain action. Okay, in bonds, the most prevalent contingency provisions are embedded options, including a call, put, and conversion to equity options. Right? Okay, unlike standalone option contracts, these options are inseparable from the bond itself. You know, like for a stock option, it's independent in the sense that when you buy an option, you don't actually have to have the underlying. But for bonds with contingency provision, it always comes with the bond, right? So what it means is that these options are inseparable from the bond itself. It means you have to have the bond. Nonetheless, their value can be determined by comparing the bond value with the contingency provision to that of a similar bond issued by the same entity. An example of a contingency provision in bonds is an embedded call option, which grants the issuer the right to redeem the bond before its maturity date under certain conditions, such as a decline in interest rates, so allowing the issuer to refinance the bond at a lower rate, thus saving on interest expenses. For example, the issuer, the company that wants to borrow the money, they issue a bond at an interest rate, right? In this case, it's a fixed interest rate. But what if in the future the interest rate were to go down, right? It's able to refinance a bond at a lower rate. Already given you we already have this agreement with the bond holder. So that means I am obliged to pay you this interest. But what if the issuer want to have the option to be able to call back the bond and then to end it, right? Basically to end the bond, buy back at par, and then they can then issue another bond at a lower interest rate, right? So it buys a call option from the holder. So it holds an option. The holder of the bond is selling the company a call option. So what does this mean exactly to the bond price or to the interest rate? We think of it in terms of interest rate. You want to take a guess? Is the interest rate actually higher or lower than market rate?
I think it's lower. If it's lower, then let me think. If it's lower, that means the bond I'm paying extra money, right?
Say the same company, they will issue two different bonds. One has a call option contingency provision. One is just a plain vanilla bond. And here the company has to pay interest for both bonds, right?
Yeah.
So for the plain vanilla bond, let's say it's 3%. I think this callable bond has a higher or lower interest rate than 3%.
When was the bond issued? Are they issued at the same time?
Yeah, it issued at the same time. It's just we just make it simple. It's issued at the same time. Do you think? Or
if I have a bond 3%, and then I'm together with
the issuer can call the bond back.
Then call
so who has the advantage in this case?
I think it's the issuer who has an advantage.
Yes, the issuer has an advantage, right? So the person who has a disadvantage is the buyer, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So in terms of fair pricing, who has to compensate who?
Who has to? Well, the buyer initially got a good interest rate. The only reason why the seller would exercise that contingency is because my interest is expensive, right? That I'm paying out to the lender. So I would call that, and then I would just don't want to pay that much interest.
But who has the advantage then in this case?
It's
still the option is the
borrower who issued the bond who has an advantage.
Yes, has an advantage. So in order to make it fair, does the borrower have to pay more interest or less interest to the buyer? Because now the buyer has a disadvantage, right? Because you have the right to call the option, right?
Then higher interest then.
Yes, it will have a higher interest. So if it's a two exact same bond, the one with the call option will have a higher interest. Because you think of it this way, basically the company is buying a call option from the holder of the bond. The holder is actually selling an option. So the added interest is the call premium.
Yeah.
Because if not, why would I want to lend you money when you have the right to call an option on my bond? Because for me it's risky, because if interest rate were to go down, you call the bond back, you pay me back the money, right? The par value. But I'm supposed to lend this you for example for 5 years, but now I'm getting back on the first year. Then what do I do with this money, right? If I go and lend it to other companies at a lower interest rate, I will not be able to lock in a higher interest rate that we had the agreement at the beginning, right? So I at a disadvantage. So in order for me to buy this bond from you, you have to compensate me by giving me an extra premium. Rather than a call option, you have a put option. So now let's put it this way, right? Instead of the company that is selling the bond, borrowing the money, now it's the buyer that wants to have the put option. They want to put into the company to borrow at a higher interest. So for example, right now it's 3%, right? If it's 4%, now the buyer of the bond might say, hey, I want to put it to you at 4%. I'm going to exercise the right of the put option, right? And sell a higher interest rate. So in that case, now the advantage is on the buyer side. And so the interest rate will be lower. So basically the company is selling the put option to the lender. So to lower their cost of borrowing, right? So why do you want to do that? It's because the company wants to reduce the borrowing. So anything that is unlikely for interest rate to go up, so they will just sell a put option to the bond. So that the seller, the buyer, the holder of the bond can put the bond back at a higher interest rate, right? They have to end up paying a higher interest rate. So that is another example that they can do. So remember, for a call option, the reason why you want to do it is because the company wants to have an option to refinance, right? For a putable bond, the company might want to do it because they want to reduce their costs of borrowing. And, interest rate might not go up. They want to take the chance. And that's one example. And then another one is a convertible bond. Okay, this conversion part, it's a convertible bond. So another way for companies they are able to do is that they are able to, based on certain criteria, they can convert the debt into a equity, right? So rather than repaying back in terms of like money, I'll just repay you back in terms of shares for the companies, right? So like this is a convertible bond example. I think you heard of it before, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
convertible. Yeah.
yeah.
But anyway, this I think it will be a lot simpler if we go into like real life examples. I'll try to come out with real life examples that we can see. I think that will be a little bit easier. Lah. But for right now, you just have an intuitive understanding. Like I think for most people when they're reading up on CFA, see like call, put, and conversion, they will just memorize it, right? I just do it for exam. I don't even know like what in terms of like, all the questions they were asking. Those are actually very good questions, right? That people in that we like truly want to understand. Like they
Mhm.
have no experience in like in terms of real life experience, like working for banks or companies that are actually borrowing money. They might not even have a chance to look at it as an example.
Mhm.